The weekends, a new week begins, or is it two? Is the question today as we roll into All-Star break week. Just a handful of games this week before we all step aside for, I think, a full 7 days. We have a full 7 days off between basketball games, or is it only 6? Doesn't matter. It's a while. Many leagues, Yahoo head-to-head leagues, combine weeks 18 and 19 into one long week. Make sure to check your league settings before you make any decisions this week on your fantasy squad, because you might end up accidentally using all of your weekly moves and still have another week left at the end of it. It's happened to the best of us. It's happened to me in the past. But now I am fully aware, because most of my leagues are on Yahoo, and I have a good feel for how they play this thing out. It's also really important to look and see how different teams are scheduled. It's not that you can stream better over a 2-week week, but it's also possible that, one, other teams in your league might not realize that the two are combined, and they might blow their moves early. And two, if you play your cards right, you can really line up the games nicely into sort of an old-fashioned long stream where, if you get someone who plays close to the end before the break and then comes out and plays quickly on the other side of it, you can really maximize games and probably add, we always try to target like an extra 1.5 roughly games on the week with a roster move without, it would be long streaming from a time standpoint, but not from like how often teams play, if that makes any sense. So we'll get into that a little bit as we get through the week. Today is not a day to be making many roster moves, because today there are a ton of basketball games, and you're probably, I don't want to say definitely, but you're probably staring down the barrel of a head-to-head overload day with 11 games going, 22 out of the 32 or 30 teams playing. Sorry, thinking football. So you shouldn't really have to make significant moves today. We'll start looking at that stuff a little bit more starting tomorrow on the show. And people are like, Dave, what about my leagues where I have to go day before? If you're in a head-to-head league, your moves should react day of. Roto, I like day before. I like Roto day before because, you're probably not trying to squeeze a play in at the last minute. You're thinking more along the lines of a games cap situation. Head-to-head, if you got a guy that gets ruled out, especially in the playoffs, you want to be able to just kick him to the curb. Anyway, hi, everybody. Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today. It's Monday. It's the start of Week 18. I am your host, Dan Bespris. Still fighting my way through a little bit of a lingering cough. This ended up being a really raunchy cold that went through our house. I'm personally almost 2 weeks into this thing, and I still have a ton of sinus pressure, and I still am coughing intermittently, and I've just come to terms with the fact that I'm just never going to be healthy again. That's fine. We'll go through life like this. But it's also reverse chronological lightning round Monday. We're going to go backwards through the weekend. We'll hit on the news as we discuss the different teams, because there wasn't really one particularly large piece of news that broke this morning. The stuff from over the weekend, largely Zion, and then also the players that we've been kind of laser focused on since the trade deadline. To me, that's the stories, and we'll get to those as we push our way through. Again, I am at Dan Bespris on Twitter, DanBesbris. If you're listening on one of our recorded podcast feeds, whether that's Spotify or Apple or whatever, come join us next time for the live show over at youtube.com/sportsethos. I'm trying to get these shows going around 9 a.m. Pacific time daily where possible, and I hope to see you over there. Let's begin. Boston beat Memphis in the early game, or 2 early games on Sunday before the Super Bowl. Jaylen Brown's still out. They assume he's out through the All-Star break, but he's kind of out there getting work done every day with a facial fracture. We haven't heard hide nor hair from Marcus Smart in heaven knows how long at this point, which means in the interim, Derek White is dunking on people. It's pretty amazing, actually, that Boston has someone of White's caliber that can kind of step up and everything else. Malcolm Brogdon also sat out this ball game, so that meant even more for Derek White. Sam Hauser hit 6 more three-pointers here, and as I put in a tweet last night, I realize that Hauser's playing really well. He also runs unbelievably hot and cold. He also does almost nothing besides hit three-pointers. Now, admittedly, he has 19 of them over his last 4 ball games. That's a lot of 3 balls. But he has a grand total of 17 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 total defensive stats over those 4 games. So you take the good with the bad. If you wanted to stream Hauser, they go tomorrow and Wednesday. So it would be probably a pretty good 3-pointer stream because they've got Detroit on Wednesday, their last game before the break. They might even rest somebody else in that one. Milwaukee should be a little bit more of a test, I would think. I don't know how many open threes he gets off in that game tomorrow, but I feel like if you look at those 2 ball games combined, you could expect at least 5 threes over 2 games total with him. And then they don't play on that last day before the break. They come out and they play on the 23rd. Boston has a pretty long layoff in there. So that's one of those plays where maybe you make one move tomorrow and you make another move on Thursday, and then you kind of try to sandwich that a little bit. But I have to admit, I'm way too nervous to deploy Hauser in a roto format. And when Brogdon's back, there's also a little bit of a crunch, not a huge one, but a little bit. And I don't know that you can expect a whole lot outside of the very large 3-pointer performance. Al Horford, 16, 9, and 5 with a block and 4 3-pointers. Every time you guys want to cash him out for dead, Big Al comes back and has himself a line. I'm tired of the same defense over and over again. He's not a great head-to-head option. We knew he was going to sit back-to-backs this year. He's older. They're going to preserve him, especially with their standings as good as they are. But he's a really nice roto play. He'll get you some threes. He'll get you some boards, get you some assists, get you a block. Never turns the ball over. That's why he's in the 70s. I expect him to hang out there mostly. I don't know why I'm spending so much time on Boston. There really isn't that much to take away from them. There's also very little to take away from Memphis as well. I would just offer a word of caution on the Grizzlies side. JJJ was in foul trouble in this game. He fouled out actually in 20 minutes. So that allowed Santi Aldama to play 28 minutes as the backup power forward. Yes, he had a better line, but no, that's not going to happen nightly. And then Xavier Tillman and Brandon Clark are splitting the center minutes. And right now, that means not enough for either of them. For Clark, if he could consistently get 24, I probably would take a longer look, but it hasn't been consistent. So probably leave it alone. Detroit-Toronto had some interesting angles yesterday. Hamidou Diallo had 18 and 7. We know enough about his fantasy game to know that eventually his free throws, lack of 3-pointers, and typically kind of weirdly high turnovers will bust you in 9-cat. He's an interesting points league target that I'm not picking up because there's a body rotation thing going on in Detroit. We're kind of waiting to see what happens here with Sadiq Bey gone. The Golden State, Atlanta, Detroit, everybody, I'm forgetting one team in that deal, Portland deal that is producing James Wiseman for the Pistons is going through. So at some point in the very near future, we're going to have to deal with the Wiseman stuff in Detroit. So, no, I'm not adding Hamidou Diallo. I'm not adding Alec Burks. I'm not adding Livers either. These guys that are picking up the Sadiq Bey minutes, I don't care about because I think that it's all going to change here in the not too distant future because Detroit has basically said that they want to play Wiseman. And if he's getting in there at a big man spot, that's going to push Isaiah Stewart presumably to the bench. I can't imagine they push Jalen Duren to the bench. I know he turned an ankle in this one. If you're wondering about Duren's minutes in this ball game, he just, he came back and he played through it in the second half, but I do expect there to be some kind of tightening for him. So Duren might miss a ball game, and then that'll really screw up our ability to handicap because if Duren's not in there and Wiseman is, and they give James like 27 minutes in his first ball game, everybody's going to go crazy for it. But here, let's do our best to kind of predict the way this is likely to go. First of all, Killian Hayes is back in the starting lineup as a low-end point guard. Same deal as always. Jaden Ivey showing growth as the year goes. That's all you want there, so just stick it out. And Bojan Bogdanovic is in there getting all the shots and kind of helping to steady the ship a little bit for the Pistons. Those guys, I think we have a pretty good feel for what they're going to be the rest of the way. I believe in my heart of hearts, that Jalen Duren is going to see plenty of playing time the rest of the way. He's shown himself to be, frankly, a bit of a Goliath on the glass. We're seeing more defensive stats for him lately, which is pretty amazing. And so I don't think that Wiseman is going to knock him off the horse. I am concerned that the recent slight uptick from Isaiah Stewart is going to be decimated by Wiseman, because I don't think that the Pistons are that high on Stewart anymore as like a key building block of the future. He seems fine, but I don't think that they're like, oh yeah, like this is a guy we have to have in our long-term plans. So he, to me, feels like a guy who might suffer a little bit at the hands of Wiseman. Although the argument against that is Stewart has stepped out and can hit a three ball now, and Duren cannot. And Wiseman is not much of a shooter. He's got a little mid-range game. So how do you play those guys together? I don't know. Dumb as the Pistons have looked at times over the last few years with who they're playing and when, I can't imagine that they'd be so idiotic to stunt the growth of Jalen Duren. So then the question becomes, what do we do with James Wiseman? Well, I did some digging prior to the podcast today, and I tried to figure out any time that Wiseman saw 25 minutes or more in his time with the Golden State Warriors. And believe it or not, it wasn't often. I think it was a grand total of 4 basketball games where he's played 25 minutes or more. And in those games, he had some kind of interesting fantasy lines. One of them came on January 14th, 2021. Yeah, I wrote these down. He had 18 points, 5 boards, 2 assists, a steal, 2 blocks on 8 out of 13 shooting. And he actually made both of his free throws in that game, but that actually typically was not the case. The game just prior to that, January 12th, he played 26 minutes and had only 8 points, but 9 boards and 2 blocks, 4 of 12 shooting, and 0 for 2 at the free throw line. Did I say 25 or 26 minutes? I think I said 26, right? He had to get up to 26 minutes. And then where's the other one? I think he had one earlier this year in a blowout loss, and he put up like 30 points in that one. That's the one that I forgot to write down. So then you got to go back and kind of look at the Wiseman package as a whole. What happens if he sees an uptick in minutes? I think you can pretty fairly well assume that his field goal percent is going to be a positive for your fantasy team. His free throw percent is not. He's not a good foul shooter. He's going to be in the 60s. If he's in the high 60s, which he has been in his limited run so far this year, you probably chalk that up as a win. On a tanking team, he'll probably get enough opportunity to really hurt you, actually, at the free throw line. But then what about the other stuff? So far this year, he hasn't even really been blocking shots in his limited run. He blocked some 2 years ago when he also played a bit for the Warriors, but even that was a little bit suspect. So my take on Wiseman, if you're going to like really pare it down to do I or don't I, is I'm not touching him in category leagues. Not with a 10-foot pole. I don't like his category league value. I think he's going to end up hurting teams more than he helps them. Is he worth a speculative add on the points league side? I think there I would say probably. Because if they do really shoehorn him 25 minutes of action, he could legitimately average like 13 to 15 points and, 7 to 9 rebounds. And he might do it with good field goal percent and terrible free throws. And maybe he lucks into a block and maybe he gets an assist and a half or something like that. And that's probably just barely enough to make some hay in points league. And let's say that things break in the right direction for him. Maybe he does push a little bit past that. I honestly don't know. But that's where I sit. I'm not touching him in category leagues. As far as Toronto goes, Gary Trent Jr. was out. Precious Achiuwa actually was added to the injury report with an ankle sprain for the next ball game. I got the feeling that for Trent, they're just trying to give him a little bit of time off. This was a game against a tanking Pistons team that Toronto barely eked out. That's not a great look for them, but they won the ball game, so no harm done. I think we probably see Trent right after the All-Star break, if I had to guess, but maybe we even get lucky and find out that he plays before then. Toronto they have 1 or 2 games this week, just 1 going into the break. So I think they probably just give him that game off. And so that buys Trent like almost a full 2 weeks without basketball. He's been really, really good lately. He is at risk of going to the bench once OG Anunoby is back. I think they'll start Trent over Achua if Jakob Poeltl is going to stick in the starting lineup now, and Jakob looked good. He fouled out, but he played 25 minutes, had 6 points, 5 boards, 2 steals, and 3 blocks. He was a plus 11. He was arguably the biggest impact guy for Toronto. And then Detroit came roaring back when the Raptors were once again unable to actually defend it all. So I think Poeltl's going to have a really big role for this team. I'm excited about it. Fire him up. And then we'll take the rest kind of as we see it. Because if Achua and Trent are both out for the next ball game, I don't know who that starts. Does that start Thad Young? I don't think they'll start Chris Boucher, although he might be worth a one-game stream. Let's just kind of, again, play this one by ear a little bit. Not a head-to-head move you want to make because they only have the one ball game. But on the Roto side, if we find out everybody's out, then, yeah, I mean, you could pick up Chris Boucher for kind of a one-night games cap stand, so to speak. Let's go back to Saturday. More games on Saturday. Philly beat Brooklyn 101-98. This is kind of the new look Nets in this ball game because they did have Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges active. On the Philly side, I have to admit, I'm starting to get a little bit worried about DeAnthony Melton. I wasn't before, but now they've got Jalen McDaniels who soaked up 16 minutes. So they just have more options if they want to go a little bigger, if they want to go a little bit smaller. McDaniels' acquisition is probably not good for Melton. And he had maybe his worst game of the whole year in this one. I'm going to give DeAnthony another week. Every time this happens to him, it takes him a week to figure out where he belongs, and then he starts to play better again. But the margin for error got really small now. So I'm not dropping him. I know this is like the ultimate in droppable performances. 1 rebound, and I'm 0 for 3. But in my opinion, you hold on for just a little bit longer, unless you're in your playoffs already, at which point then it's like, fine, I get it. You can't sit on a guy who might not do anything for a week, but we need to see how it shakes out. Over on the Nets side, I thought Ben Simmons would play a little bit more, but he's just not right, and I don't think he ever will be again. So you could probably drop him. You could probably drop Dorian Finney-Smith and Royce O'Neal. I know Dorian played 34 minutes, but I don't think he's going to be all that heavily involved in what the team's doing on offense. Royce O'Neal moved to the bench as kind of like the backup Dorian Finney-Smith. Joe Harris hit 6 3-pointers, but did nothing else off the bench, so not interested there. Dinwiddie played 31 minutes, just didn't have a great shooting game. He's a start. Cam Johnson looked really good in his 28 minutes. He's a start. Mikal Bridges, obviously, we knew he was a start, and so is Nick Claxton. Denver beat Charlotte on the road. Denver was able to give Jamal Murray a little more time off here. They knew this wasn't going to be a hyper-competitive ball game. So Bruce Brown slid into the starting 5. Aaron Gordon also took this one off. So Vlatko Konchar got the start. He's actually put up decent numbers when he's gotten starting minutes. Konchar has. But again, you're rolling the dice a little bit there. Christian Braun had a nice game off the bench with 4 steals, but he'll play more now that Bones is gone. But you likely need a couple guys out, which is what happened in this one. Again, you're mostly looking at Bruce Brown when the Nuggets decide they need to sit somebody. Dennis Smith Jr. had a nice game over on the Charlotte side. Maybe this is a byproduct of Jalen McDaniels being gone, and that it's going to force Charlotte to play a little bit smaller. I would keep one very watchful eye on Dennis Smith Jr., at least until Kelly Oubre comes back, which I do think he does. Gordon Hayward, he's been a little bit better lately. I've picked on Hayward all season long because he has been quite terrible this year. He's number 184. 184 in 9-cat on the season. He has been better than that the last month. He's number 127 over that stretch. His percentages have improved, but the other stuff hasn't really. Last 2 weeks, he's back down to number 175. I just don't think it's worth it. Hayward just has been terrible this year. I keep getting asked, should I hold on to Gordon Hayward? I'm like, have you not listened to a single show I've done this year? Cut ties with Hayward in November, and I have not looked back. But the big story in this one is Mark Williams, who got himself into foul trouble in the first half. He only played, I think, 6 minutes before halftime, picked up 3 fouls in 6 minutes, and then he played 15 minutes in the second half, which is what you're looking for. So they really do have like a 14, 15-minute target for him in each half, which makes him a must roster player. And I do wonder if there might even be an opportunity to buy low on Mark after a foul trouble game. That doesn't really look like one because he only picked up one foul in the second half in those 15 minutes. So it's like, oh, well, he only had 4 fouls, but you kind of had to know how he got there. Try to get him if you can. Probably can't, but try. Washington beat Indiana. The spiral continues for the Pacers, even with Halliburton back. They just haven't been able to get back on the right side of things. They've lost 4 games in a row. They're now down to 25 and 33. They're now 2 games out of a play-in spot. The reason I bring this up is it feels like at some point, maybe not yet, there's still 2 months left in the season, friends, but at some point, if the Pacers don't make a furious run, they're going to start looking at youth a little bit. Miles Turner is questionable with lower back soreness for their next ball game. That would make Isaiah Jackson a very interesting pickup. They play tonight. They host the Jazz. It's not a move that you can make until you know for sure, because we know how little Jackson actually gets to play when Miles is in there. But we also saw how good he looked when Miles wasn't. Halliburton is also questionable with a left thigh contusion. Does that thrust TJ McConnell back on the board for a one-night stand? Keep a really close, watchful eye on the Pacers in case they start to pivot in a different direction. We want to be in front of that one because there's some really interesting pickups if they make the move, which hasn't happened yet, but you got to start to pay attention to it. Daniel Gafford, 4 more blocks. Love me some Daniel Gafford. We still don't know if his minutes are going to hold their 29-30 when Kyle Kuzma's back. I'm inclined to think that they probably come down just a littlest bit. But damn, if he doesn't put up good fantasy numbers in full starters minutes. Monte Morris was better here, but we know how he kind of comes and goes. Denny Avdia, he's on a really good shooting heater at the moment. Avdia is. I do worry a bit about what his fantasy lines are going to look like when the shot cools off, which is why I've remained somewhat reticent on Denny. I think you can play him as long as he's hot, but just know that at some point it's going to run out, and it's going to happen in a game where you had him in your lineup. So just hope you can kind of catch it early when the cold spell comes, because it will. I mean, these guys, he's not going to shoot 80% for the year. Gafford might, but these other dudes that, actually have to shoot from outside of 2 feet, it's a little bit of a different beast. Miami beat Orlando 107-103 in overtime. Yeah, kind of a gross basketball game. Caleb Martin played well, but he's more of a schedule stream kind of play. Gabe Vincent looked good again. I think he also, right now at least, sits more in the schedule stream department, although I think we got a report that Tyler Hero is doubtful, not even questionable. He's downgraded to doubtful. Yeah, that was about an hour ago that came out. So Hero's doubtful and Lowry's out. This might be your moment if you want to get Gabe Vincent in there. Or hell, Caleb Martin probably gets a boost there. Max Strus probably does enough to get himself a little bit of game action. You need one of the big usage guys out. Hero's one of the big usage guys. So take him out of the mix and his 23 shots he took in this ball game, and everybody's probably going to get 2 or 3 more, the main guys. And that's enough to get Vincent up and over the hump. He'll also have more point guard duties with Hero out. Tyler's not like a distributor by trade, but with the ball in his hand all that time, you just move it into somebody else's hands. You guys get it. Anyway, over to the Orlando side. Mo Wagner strikes me as kind of an interesting schedule stream type of guy, probably the rest of the way. Unless, we see Bol come back into the mix, but I don't think that's happening. Jonathan Isaac, he's being brought along extremely slowly, although he did get up to 14 minutes in this ball game, so that was something. That's very much his season high for Jonathan, but we're not doing anything with him until he gets up near 20. Jalen Suggs has been putting up some obscene defensive numbers lately, and he's cut into Cole Anthony's playing time. That is something to keep a watch on, because Cole Anthony had actually been playing relatively well lately. I've been kind of hard on him on the podcast. I know I'm probably needlessly hard on Cole, but now maybe we should be a little more hard on him if Suggs is going to go take his playing time. I'm not adding Jalen Suggs. If you did, you're probably just hoping he gets you a bunch of defensive stats, because everything else is a little bit on the gravy side. He doesn't typically shoot the 3 ball. 3 of them in this ball game. Go figure. He's a bad foul shooter. It's just too dangerous, man. It's too dangerous. It's too risky. Josh Hart's Knicks debut, he played 26 brilliant minutes, actually. He was fantastic for New York. 11.7 boards, 4 assists, 4 steals. He and his old pal Jalen Brunson, they look good. Quentin Grimes still started this ball game, but he was terrible. He's obviously a drop. I don't know that you all need to be told that. And I would assume that, I mean, you might see Josh Hart in the starting lineup as soon as the Knicks' next basketball game, so he's very much a go. I think Hart's arrival also hurts Emmanuel Quickley, who did have 15 and 5 in this one, but he shot 6 of 9. Typically, he's not going to make 6 out of 9 shots. And the fact that he only got 9 shots and 23 minutes, to me, is reason to say he's probably not going to belong on roster for anything more than a schedule stream going forward. Isaiah Hartenstein, Jericho Sims, they split the center minutes. They both rebounded a bunch and didn't do anything else. I think you can probably leave those guys alone. On the Utah side, Kelly Olynyk is someone I've been trying to ram down your throats. He had foul trouble here, and that does happen to him from time to time, but he still managed 26 minutes, 11 and 3 with a steal and a three-pointer on good percentages. He's a hold. Collin Sexton, terrible shooting game, missed a bunch of free throws, but he's also a hold because he's going to do a ton, and Sexton actually fouled out in 30 minutes here. So weird little one-day opening if you wanted to try to get your hands on Sexton or Olynyk. And people have come to me and they're like, Dan, my trade deadline passed when the NBA trade deadline passed. And mine didn't. So, sorry. In all the leagues I run, I push the trade deadline as far down the board as humanly possible. This is one of those times. So, I think if you can go get Olynyk or Sexton, I would try to do it. And then also take a long, hard look at Talen Horton-Tucker. He has a super weird fantasy game. Typically doesn't hit three-pointers. He did make one here. Not a good foul shooter. Does get some steals. Doesn't typically block shots. He has kind of almost a backwards, like he's a point guard stuff. They're going to need him to run some point with them trading away other point guards. But the assists are, I think, what makes THT somewhat intriguing right now. I don't think you're going to be beating yourself up if you miss out on this particular ad because his fantasy game is super weird and wonky, and like the low percentages and low three-pointers are probably going to counterweight the assists in a way that drops him outside the top 100. He does make a lot of sense in points formats because you don't need all of those things to work out well. You just need him to be pretty good in a couple of stuff. And I think he might be pretty good in a couple of things going forward. I liked that he got to do a lot in this ball game. So THT, if you are punting threes, he's interesting. If you are punting threes and percentages, he's very interesting. And if you are attacking all 9 categories, he's not. Atlanta beat the tanking San Antonio Spurs 125-106. Jeremy Sohan looked good. He's probably worth a roster spot right now. Trey Jones played, but he's going to sit out their next one with foot soreness. Keldon Johnson played. I mean, you're going to see Spurs taking time off all the time going forward, so that's going to be kind of an annoying team to roster players on. Hopefully, they largely play and just, kind of stagger or diminish minutes a little bit. But we do have some things we need to talk about on San Antonio. Not much to talk about on the Hawks side, so, luckily we can just blitz through that. John Collins, questionable for their next one, but I think he plays better now that the trade deadline is passed, whatever that's worth. And they've got Saddiq Bey coming in, so he's not an ad, but he'll put a little bit of a squeeze on everybody. And then Onyeka Okongwu, who had actually been playing pretty well, even in his backup role lately, didn't do much in this ball game. And that's the fear with a backup role is every once in a while, you're going to have a game where if you're not cooking, line will turn ugly pretty quick. So Okongwu, I don't know that he's a must roster player in a lot of formats. A head-to-head, to me, he actually makes more sense because Roto, you're going to get a game like this and you're going to go, why did I use this on my games cap? But he's probably a hold overall. You can't punt on him after one slightly bad ball game. Stanley Johnson got waived by the Spurs after this one, so that opens up a couple more minutes for other guys. And this is, to me, how you have to play it. Keldon Johnson needs to remain on rosters. Trey Jones needs to remain on rosters. I think Jeremy Sohan probably belongs on rosters. Zach Collins probably belongs on rosters. And then you get into the maybes. Malachi Branham is a maybe. He doesn't do much besides points, boards, and assists. So again, profiles much more as a points league type of target. If you guys are hearing me on this one, he's a guy that probably will hurt you more than he helps on the 9 category side. So do with that what you will. Devontae Graham, also someone that is probably going to creep into different fantasy discussions. Here, with everybody largely playing for the Spurs, but somewhat lower minutes, Graham had a decent fantasy line. I don't know where the 2 blocks came from, but he's going to be out there and he's going to go gunning because this team has nothing to play for. And so he can just get wild. You saw he put up 31 in the previous game when they rested a bunch of their younger guys. I think Devontae Graham actually makes a ton of sense on the head-to-head side because I don't know that they're going to rest him in games. They might just say, whatever, dude, like go have some fun. Go have some fun. We'll try to move you next year or off season or whatever. But live it up, man. Like we're trying to lose ball games. We don't care what you do. Roto, I'd be way, way worried to play Devontae in a game where they weren't sitting a bunch of guys out. But like, look, we already know Trey Jones is out for their next ball game. That might be enough to get Devontae into the starting lineup. Keita Bates-Diop probably the guy who ends up starting, but you never know. And then you got to figure Graham sees a couple extra of those guard minutes. So if Jones sits, would I start Devontae? I might want to see it one more time. But look, we're going to have more opportunities to play these guys. The Spurs are going to sit their regulars, not infrequently. So even if you want to get a little more data for your file on Devontae, he's interesting. Spot start in Roto and probably just a play in a lot of head-to-head formats. All right, let's keep shuffling along. Cleveland beat Chicago 97-89. Ooh, barn burner. Patrick Williams looked good, but he's been on and off the radar so many times so far this year that I can't make any moves really with Chicago, and I can't make any moves with Cleveland either. Move along. This is really a nothing to see here game. I guess we could point out that Evan Mobley's made some nice strides over the course of the year. Lakers beat the Warriors without LeBron James, but with the new guys settling in. And to no one's surprise, D'Angelo Russell made the Lakers better. Like if you didn't see that coming, it was one of the most obvious fit decisions that I think I've ever seen in watching the NBA. Russell Westbrook was just a terrible fit for the Lakers. You know, the funny thing is, Russ actually made more sense on the last year iteration of the Lakers, which they had a bunch of shooters, but had no one that could play any defense. So if Russ would have taken that bench role last year and had, you know, Malik Monk around him and whoever else was actually knocking down shots last season, probably made more sense offensively. This year, it's like Russ and a bunch of non-floor spacers, so everybody just crashing into the paint and turning the basketball over. And now suddenly you have D'Lo, who can shoot. You have Beasley, who typically can shoot, but not in this ball game. You got Lonnie Walker, who can still shoot, who was already there. Schroeder has had some issues with the jump shot, but offensively, he's okay. Rui. Here's the thing. Like, you don't need everyone to be a floor spacer now that your primary ball handler, not named LeBron James, can also shoot. Jared Vanderbilt looked really good in 17 minutes, 12, 8, and 4. All right, so here's the thing with Vanderbilt. I did add him speculatively in a couple of spots. I don't think there's enough playing time consistently for him. He provides something the Lakers badly need, which is toughness. Lakers had no toughness. Now they have a little bit of toughness. They were just getting clobbered on the glass. Nobody puts a body on anyone on that team. So there are going to be games where the Lakers realize they need someone to just go out there and clobber somebody. Go put a body on someone. Go get a rebound. Go play some defense. And actually, Vanderbilt showed a pretty good knack for passing out of the short roll in this ball game. So, do I think he's going to be inside the top 100 rest of season? No. But do I think there's going to be a pretty consistent schedule streamy kind of role for him? Yeah, I do. You're not going to get this much out of Rui when LeBron is back. You got to look at the guys that took more shots in this game and understand how that gets impacted by LeBron. Rui, to me, Schroeder, those are the two guys who got a bunch of looks in this game, and that number shrinks precipitously when LeBron is back in the mix. This game didn't have the world's fastest pace, but also the teams just shot really poorly, so it's kind of a weird combination of things. Anthony Davis always struggles against Draymond Green, but I'll also admit he doesn't really look fully healthy to me. That makes me very nervous on the AD front. He's probable, and he's going to try to play through whatever, but I'm a little bit worried there. As far as fantasy stuff goes, LeBron, AD, and D'Lo, I think, are the only guys that I believe are must roster right now. And then Vanderbilt is kind of your upside stash in case he ends up playing more. But with all the pickups that came out over the last week, I don't know that any of us have a roster space for someone to just kind of sit on. Long explanation to just say stick with the stars. Andrew Wiggins turned an ankle in this one. He had been playing a little bit better prior to it, but obviously if he misses time, then DiVincenzo gets ramped up a little bit. You'll just have more Jordan Poole, which I don't know if that's what the Warriors want necessarily, but to me, DiVincenzo is the guy who moves from kind of one side of the cut line to the other. Sacramento beat Dallas in overtime. De'Aaron Fox went crazy. I think he had 26 points in fourth quarter and overtime. That's wild. No Malik Monk on the Kings side, so Terrence Davis stepped into that bench heater kind of role, and there's just no chance you can trust him to do that every single night. So no fantasy adjustments on the Kings side. Dallas, first look at Luka and Kyrie together. It's a perfect time to fade a team. Superstars playing together for a first ball game is like prototypical fade. They played pretty well. I'll give the Mavs that. And some of it was the fact that they just knocked down every three-pointer. So, the Kings defense is a good way to kind of drop some dudes in to play together. But I think you're going to see a little bit of disjointing when Dallas has to play a team that has any cohesion on defense whatsoever. I don't know that Minnesota necessarily qualifies as that team. That's who they're playing tonight. But almost every team in the NBA is a little better defensively than the Kings. I know Sacramento did a better job late in this ball game. They slowed Dallas down a little bit late, but also like the Mavs had already piled up stats before that point. So what does this all mean fantasy-wise? That's what you guys care about. And then we're going to we'll do the like who didn't play over the weekend game. Fantasy-wise, Kyrie is probably going to put up numbers pretty similar to what he did playing alongside Kevin Durant. He's already been a 1B to a Kevin Durant, to a Harden for stretches, to LeBron if you go back farther. This isn't going to be a new world for Irving. This is a very new world for Luka Doncic. He's never had a true ball-handling alpha number 2 on his team. And I would venture to say that we see Luka take a substantial hit, which from a fantasy standpoint is not what you want to hear. He's number 13 per game on the season. But maybe the thing to really pay attention to is that he's been much worse than that lately. Remember, Luka got off to a very hot start. He's down near the edge of the top 100 over the last 3 weeks. A lot of that is terrible free throw shooting, yes. But, assists have been lower for Luka over the last little bit. And that probably does trend down with Kyrie in town. He only had 5 assists in this ball game. He's probably not going to be a 30, 10, and 10 guy with someone else to do something. Ultimately, this is going to be good for Luka. He probably misses fewer ball games and the Mavs get better. But fantasy-wise, in the short term, it's not good for Luka. Josh Green had 23 points on 5 3-pointers. I want you guys to do a little experiment with me and not look at the points and threes for Green. 40 minutes, 5 boards, 1 assist, 1 steal. Let's say, hypothetically, he didn't make 8 out of 12 shots. Let's assume that over some stretch of time, Josh Green equilibrates and levels back off to whatever his field goal percent will be when his uh, career mark, which for him is actually 52%, which is pretty good. He's actually a good field goal percent guy. He takes high percentage shots. Um, and even his three-pointers, he's shooting 43% from downtown. This dude is ripe for a mean reversion in the wrong direction. And as much as I enjoy the uh the Josh Green stuff, like he's a pretty fun young basketball player, we are seeing the best iteration of Josh fantasy-wise that we'll probably see the rest of the way. He, in my estimation, is a sell high. I think he does settle into like extreme back end value, 100 to 130 range is probably where he settles. But this level of, Trey Murphy-esque efficiency probably won't stick. And you also had an overtime game too. So, 5 extra minutes for everybody of relevance. Getting a lot of questions on Christian Wood also, and they are reasonable. Wood is being brought along really slowly right now. And I have to admit, I'm pretty floored. I mean, I know this is the back end of a back-to-back, so like you could try to chalk it up to that. But since he's come back from his busted hand, he's played 19, 17, 12, and 18 minutes. They don't need his offense as much now that Kyrie's in town, so perhaps that's part of it. But I have to think that for Wood, his minutes do trend back up into the mid-20s at some point. But they are kind of liking what Dwight Powell's bringing on defense right now, and so it's not a guarantee. I'll admit, this is not how I thought the Christian Wood story was going to develop this year. I think it would be disingenuous for me to try to take credit for saying he was a super duper sell high when he was going crazy, because I thought he was just going to sort of like settle back. We knew the blocks were going to kind of revert back to the mean and other stuff like that, because there was that stretch there where he was averaging like 3 blocks a ball game. And we knew the free throw percent was going to come back down towards the career mark. So for me, I thought he was just going to be a mean reversion and he was going to fall back into that kind of like 50 to 70 range. Remember, I kept saying, if you can get top 50 or better, do it. And people were like, Dan, you're not aiming high enough. You're being a jerk to Christian Wood. And perhaps I was, but now we've got this weird stuff going on. So weird happened somehow. Not the way I expected, but here we are. And now you stuck with him. Or do you buy low on Christian Wood? I don't know if I have the stones for it, but if you could get him for a top 100, you can't get him for top 100. Who am I kidding? That's baloney. Can't be done. Hey, mid-show break to remind everybody watching, and now we're at a pretty good number of you. Please do like and subscribe. A handful of you have done it on your own, which is swell. But why I'm here is to remind you to do it if you hadn't remembered by yourself. I don't know how easy it is to hit the subscribe button when you're not the person running the account, because I see the admin side of our YouTube page. But for you guys on the other end, if there's a really easy way to subscribe to our YouTube page, I would strongly suggest you do it. Actually, the kind of cool thing is we have three live shows today here on YouTube. We moved Eric's waiver wire show to tonight because we didn't want it to run up against the Super Bowl yesterday. I think that was a wise decision on our part. So that'll be at 5 o'clock this evening, Pacific time. And then Joe and Steve have a weekly preview show at 2 o'clock Pacific time. So we're just rolling, man. We got this show at 9. 5 hours later, we got Joe and Steve. 3 hours after that, you got Eric. Really busy Sports Ethos YouTube page these days. There's going to be more baseball shows from Joe as well. We'll have more football shows next year with JP. Lot going on here on our YouTube page. So please do take a second to hit that like button. It's at 27. That's half the number of people watching right now. So please do. If you're just popping in and joining us live, please like and subscribe to our YouTube page and like the video. I mean, more than anything else. So it kind of keeps climbing the charts and pops up on people's sidebars and all that fun stuff. But let me let everybody know now on Twitter that we are getting into the Q&A session in a moment. Whoopsies, I hit a wrong button. You guys are just going to have to watch me do it. Q&A session starting in 30 seconds, he says on Twitter, hoping that a couple more people roll on in and join us for that. And now let's play the who didn't play over the weekend game. And as we peer back towards Friday, provided the internet works quickly and we can get there, who didn't play over the weekend? Phoenix didn't play over the weekend, but they should have TJ Warren for their next ball game. Interestingly, Cam Payne, Landry Shamet, and Darius Baisley are all questionable for this next one. So another reason to temper your expectations on Josh Okogie, who probably does still play a reasonable amount, but you're going to see TJ Warren cut into his minutes and Torrey Craig's minutes. If Shamet plays, he'll get a little bit on that wing, more shooting guard than anything else. Baisley is a front court option for them. So I am going to pass on all of that stuff. Anybody else that didn't go over the weekend? Quickly, kind of blooping my way through this board here. I believe Houston didn't go over the weekend. And I got to say, I'm a little sad. Tari Eason still at 19 minutes. We kind of knew that was going to happen when they didn't move a forward at the trade deadline. We needed them to move Jayshawn Tate or KJ Martin, and neither one of those guys got shipped out. So they now stand in the way of Tari Eason seeing big minutes the rest of this year. I think if you're in a redraft league, you can probably move on from Eason unless you wanted to give him a week or something like that. But he actually played relatively well in this game, and the units he was a part of were winning for Houston in this game, and still he got yanked at only 19 minutes. So I don't think it's going to happen now. Again, he was a stash. We needed two guys to move, and they didn't. Just one. Eric Gordon was the only key guy that got shipped out from the Rockets, so then everybody else is still floating around, and this is without Kevin Porter Jr. back in the mix. So even that changes the calculus a little bit. Does KJ Martin continue to start when Porter Jr. comes back? I think probably. You likely see Tate move back to the bench. KJ Martin's been really good lately. The shot's been very good. He's been making his free throws more often over this last little stretch, and he's had some defensive stats lately. To me, KJ Martin makes a ton of sense as a points league option the rest of the way. Category league side, you probably just play him while he's on a heater and kind of read and react on that side, because the defensive stats are not going to stick around forever. We know that. Maybe the blocks are a little higher than they were early in the season, but he's not a big steals guy. And then we know the free throw percent is going to come back down too. Minnesota didn't go over the weekend. What do we got here? Slow-mo, 30 minutes. He looked good. He's questionable with groin soreness now. Damn shame. We should get that dude into more ball games. Mike Conley's first game with the Wolves was a little bit of a disappointment. 9 points, 3 assists, and a couple of steals. He's just going to get better every ball game, so don't panic on Conley. I really like his outlook, actually, with this team. I think ultimately, once he settles in, you're going to see pretty good usage for him. This was a blowout, so other than Anthony Edwards, who played 39 minutes for reasons I totally don't understand, this game was over pretty early, so expect bigger minute counts for, let's hope, Kyle Anderson if he plays, for Mike Conley. And then, Jaden McDaniels, we've talked about plenty, as a guy who just sits right on the fringe of fantasy relevance. Typically, head-to-head, again, I think he's a guy you can just play the rest of the year. And then Roto, to me, might be even too hard to deploy. Pelicans, well, there's a bunch of teams that didn't go Friday or Saturday or Sunday, huh? Pelicans, Thunder, Blazers, Bucks, and Clippers. Yeesh. We got a lot left to do here, don't we? There's the Pellies. CJ McCollum is questionable with an ankle sprain. If he doesn't go, you'll see a lot of Jose Alvarado. He would make sense as a brief fill-in play. Brandon Ingram's looked really good again lately. I know that they lost that ball game to the Cavs, but Ingram's looked nice. Herb Jones has been playable. Trey Murphy's been playable. JV hasn't really been playable lately. We talked about that actually during our pre-show today on YouTube. Valanciunas, I hate to say it, he might be droppable. I don't see how he gets inside the top 120, splitting minutes with Nance. Zion suffered a setback in his rehab from his blown hamstring, so that means that guys like Ingram and McCollum and Murphy and whatever these guys are going to continue to get extra shots because we just don't really know when Zion's coming back. But again, I think Jones, you can hold, Trey, you can hold, and then Alvarado's the guy you're looking at if CJ doesn't go. OKC, we'll probably get our first look at Dario Saric. Sounds like Jeremiah Robinson-Earl might also be back for the Thunder in their next ball game. I think Jalen Williams, I feel comfortable saying he's looked good enough here to where he'll continue to hold on to a very large role. What I don't know is, someone like a Jalen Williams who'd been coming on a little bit lately, or a Kenrich Williams who'd been coming on a little bit lately. Those guys to me probably maybe almost completely vanish because Saric will pick up Muscala's minutes. Robinson-Earl was playing 20-some-odd minutes before he went down and was quite close, actually, to fantasy value. So does he then kind of push his way back into that center role? We'll see. We'll see. I wouldn't do any ads on OKC yet, but I would consider dropping any of those non-core guys, which is basically Giddey, Shea, and Jalen Williams. Those are the three dudes you can hang on to. On the Portland side, Jeremy Grant was concussed. He is questionable for their next ball game, which is tonight against the Lakers. We got the Cam Reddish Portland debut here, and he looked okay, but he only played 17 and a half minutes, so I don't think we said it on Friday's show. Reddish is not the guy they wanted in their deadline moves. Matisse Thybulle is the guy they wanted. He's a guy I'm really curious about because he could actually give LeBron fits tonight if Bron plays. Does Thybulle end up with full starters minutes on this team? Because if so, you probably end up having to add him starters minutes. Matisse Thybulle is a 3 to 4 defensive stat guy. And then anything else, you're just like, okay, well, that's gravy. Drew Eubanks was better in this one. He played 29 minutes. Again, as guys come back, I don't know what that does to him, but Trendon Watford, he outplayed Watford. Trendon had 5 fouls in his 16 minutes. Eubanks remains a low-end center play. And Shaedon Sharpe had 29 minutes in this ball game. But again, these are guys that are all kind of fighting for small forward minutes. If they all end up with Thybulle, okay. But if those dudes are rotating between them, that's a pretty different monster. For the Bucks, I don't have a whole lot to add there. Middleton sat this one out because it was the back end of a back-to-back. We'll probably see some Jay Crowder here soon for Milwaukee once he gets his conditioning right. And all that does really is it sort of puts any lid on Connaughton stream. But, it's a big fat who cares. Clippers, we'll get to see Mason Plumlee make his Clippers debut. That will probably eliminate Ivica Zubac from the fantasy discussion. I don't know how much Bones or Eric Gordon is going to play for the Clippers. I'm doubting it's enough to put them on fantasy radars, but I suppose you don't really ever know until the dust fully settles. For LA right now, obviously Paul George and Kawhi when they're in there. Norman Powell has continued to do enough to hit fantasy value, and that's probably as far as it ends up going once Plumlee is in there and carving out a role. All right. Let's take a look at the big Monday card. I want to get this thing wrapped up. This is turning out to be a painfully long episode. Sorry, everybody. I didn't know I was going to keep you here that long, but whatever. Thanks for coming along for the ride. Lots of stuff tonight, but we're lightning rounding it. All right, ready? Atlanta, Sadiq Bey's debut. Charlotte, does Dennis Smith Jr. continue to get to do more? And then, of course, Mark Williams against the team that doesn't have a true attacking center on the other side. San Antonio, who the hell plays? Is the question for them going into every ball game. And then can we squeeze out a one-night stand? Cleveland, nothing. Houston, nothing really at this point. I think, now that they've made their moves, we sort of have a feel for it. Philly, what is DeAnthony Melton going to do going forward? Utah, I think we have a good feel for Utah. So I don't know if there's anything I'm watching all that closely because like a good game or a bad game out of Olynyk or Collin Sexton is not going to change the way I feel. Maybe throw Taylor Horton-Tucker on the watch list for Utah, seeing how he develops. Does Indy rest their star guys? Does Miles Turner sit? Does Halliburton sit? Would there be a one-night stand available for us there? Brooklyn. I guess Cam Thomas, I didn't talk about him on the recap. What is his role going forward? Does he end up as a drop? It kind of looked like it after that last one. Do we ever see any adjustment for Ben Simmons? The Knicks. Is Josh Hart in the starting lineup? Probably. Denver. Who plays? Who's healthy? Do they have all 5 starters back, or is anybody resting? Because then you get Bruce Brown. Miami, if Hero sits, we know Lowry's out. Gabe Vincent would be a play. Stru's probably a play. Caleb Martin might even be a play there as well. Orlando, we're tracking Jonathan Isaac's minutes. Not a whole lot else there. I guess you could throw Mo Wagner on the list, but I don't think he's going to be more than a schedule stream. Chicago, nothing. New Orleans, whether CJ's in or not is probably your health question with that team, but everything else I think we feel pretty good about at this point. OKC, what does Robinson Earl look like? And there'll be a ramp up because he's been out for a really long time, so you're not going to get any definitive info here on this first game back for him, but it might give us info on whether or not any of the guys that we've been sort of willing to schedule stream, do they lose that spot? For Minnesota, Mike Conley's second ball game. Does slow-mo play? Dallas, Luka, Kyrie together, and then Josh Green's insane shooting here lately. Also Christian Wood's minutes. Lakers, does LeBron play with the new guys? And then, obviously, the new guys. Portland, Matisse Thybulle. That's the real question for me. Washington, Daniel Gafford, what does he do? I actually didn't see a report on Kyle Kuzma before going on air with this one. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with Kuzma right now. I'm going to go ahead and call him questionable for this one, but if he plays, you're tracking Gafford's minutes there, and then Denny Avdia as well. And then the Golden State Warriors, if Wiggins sits, you probably can get some Dante DiVincenzo, but I'm actually more curious in what Dante does when the Warriors are fully healthy. I am tired. My voice is tired. I'm trying to get this thing back to going right, so a super long podcast might not be the way to go, but thank you, everybody, for tuning in. To my recorded listeners, as always, big fat thank you. Follow me on Twitter at Dan Besbris, and please take a moment to rate and review the podcast over on Apple or Spotify. And we'll have a slightly shorter one, I think, for you tomorrow. But who knows? We got to recap 11 games tomorrow. The hell do I know? Join us on YouTube next time, folks. We'll see you tomorrow. All right, YouTubers. This thing's an hour and 11 minutes deep. Oh, my God. I have no idea if the Twitter stream did anything at all. I think it didn't. Looks like Justin Holiday's signing with the Mavs after a buyout. I don't think that's going to change anything, but it does, I don't know. Maybe it carves into some of those other wings there, like a Bullock or THJ when he comes back, but whatever. Let's get into the questions. Where are those bad boys? We got a bunch of them, but we're going to do them fast today, okay? Because it's 10:15 out here already. Where do we leave off? Should I drop Larry Nance or James Wiseman for Drew Eubanks or Cam Reddish? Nah. I mean, again, 9-cat, I don't think Wiseman's... I think he's going to hurt you more than he helps, but Eubanks and Reddish aren't exactly going to do a whole lot for your team, so meh. Dan, is Desmond Bane a top 20 rest of season proposition given his recent uptick in defensive stats? He has become a complete fantasy player this season. You are right. Desmond Bane is awesome. He was one of the really highly ranked guys on the B150, and then he got hurt and everything went to pot. But he's terrific. I probably would put him more as a top 30 than 20. But I like him a lot. Do you think SGA is set to be a first rounder rest of season if he does not get consistent defensive categories like steals? I mean, yeah, those things come and go, He's averaging 1.7 steals and 1.1 blocks on the year. If he has a game or two where he doesn't get them, he'll probably make up for it in a future game. I think we're deep enough into this season to say this is who he is. Thoughts on Plumlee and the Zubats situation? I have both. Smack Sauce, you might end up with neither at the end of this. I think they end up in a timeshare, and probably neither one does enough at that point. But you can watch a little bit. Oh, yeah, I put this one up there earlier. It's tough to drop a late fifth-rounder pick like Ben Simmons, but is it time? Yeah, probably. And John, strongly recommend you guys listen to my podcast coming into next year, because I told everybody 1,000 times I want nothing to do with Ben Simmons. Whether it's his back or his knee or his brain, he is not a basketball player really anymore, but for 2 weeks early this year. Wondering at what point to cut bait on recent underperformers like Tobias Harris and taking a chance on the waiver wire. Yeah, I'm not moving off of Tobias that quickly. I know he hasn't been great, and Phillies, you're getting a lot more Tyrese Maxey, but Tobias was so good for so long this year. I think you got to just see it through a little bit more. What to do with Hornets players with 2 games in my fantasy finals if I get there? I have Rozier, PJ Washington, and Mark Williams. Honestly, get there. Once you're there, then you can sort it out. Once you get there, maybe you'd play them for their first game of the week if it's on. I haven't looked that far to which week that is for you, but like if their first game of the week is on Tuesday and then they don't play again until Friday or Saturday or something like that, you could potentially drop all 3 on Wednesday. Because there are probably teams that go 3 times the rest of the week. And if you turn a 1-game week into a 3-game week with 1 move, terrific. But you got to get there. I don't know if I'd do anything right now. I mean, if you could move those guys, that's fine. But again, get to the finals. Should I drop Jabari Smith Jr. to add Talen Horton-Tucker? Honestly, I don't care. Either way, coin flip on that one. I don't think either one's going to make or break your team. Do I try and trade Jeremy Grant and Jordan Clarkson for Kevin Durant? You could try, man, but I don't think it's going to happen. Sell high on Cam Thomas. I don't know if you can sell high on Cam Thomas. His last game was bad. You guys might be you may be 1 game late on this one. Yeah, I don't think those guys get you KD. Yeah, T says no one's buying Cam Thomas. Yeah. Afraid you may be right. Vanderbilt's outlook. I think he's a schedule streamer, but I do like him a lot as a fit on the Lakers. I'd be very surprised if he consistently got more than 24 minutes. They just have too many sort of mix and match type of pieces now. He'll get in there when the Lakers badly need rebounding and toughness. And if there's a game where they don't need that as much, if AD is tougher or they're going against a team that's not a great rebounding team, you might see the Lakers tip more towards the offensive side. That's why it makes it hard for me to say he's an ad. I did add him in like 1 or 2 roto spots just to leave on my bench to see if he carves out a role where it is around 24 minutes. Maybe my roto team needs 7 to 9 rebounds and 3 assists and a steal or something like that. But I think overall in 9-cat, he doesn't get inside the top 100. Add or stash Jeremiah Robinson Earl. No, I don't think you need to get ahead of that one. This is a top 100 upside kind of play. So yeah, you don't have to jump the gun on that dude. I traded Chris Paul, Jonas Valanciunas, Jalen Duren, and KJ Martin for Kawhi, Jalen Green, and Collin Sexton. Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, Kawhi's the best player in that deal. And then CP3. And then Duren and Sexton are kind of interesting. Jalen Green is the I hope it works guy. Yeah, it's fine. I'm okay with it. You're sort of taking a shot that Jalen Green figures it out down the stretch. I don't know. I don't think he does, but I could be wrong. 50-50, whatever. I don't think you're going to miss Valanciunas. I don't think you're going to miss KJ Martin. So, yeah, it's fine. What's up? I hate that 4-team trade. Feels like the other trades open things up for the right players like Mark Williams, but that Wiseman trade felt like a value killer for Duren, Bey, etc. Well, Bey on the Hawks, yeah, he's going to be buried. But I don't know. I'll believe the Wiseman thing when I see it. What is Duren's value moving forward, and is Chris Wood coming off the bench a permanent thing? I think Jalen Duren is a hold. I think Christian Wood is a hold also. I don't exactly know what the Mavs are doing with Wood. I'll admit to you guys. I'm watching that and I'm thinking, why are they not? It's not a leg thing. He may be back to bench guy, and then they still don't have Maxi Kleber back. So Wood may be coming off the bench. I think his minutes do tick back up into the 20s, but he probably doesn't get that full-fledged 30-minute starting role back, if I had to guess. So, and then as far as Duren goes, I mean, Detroit could screw it up here, but I don't know. Hold on. Trade Ja and John Collins for JJJ. Category leagues, yes. Category leagues, yes. Pistons think Stewart turned into Lauri Markkanen. Unless they play him at small forward. I don't know what the hell they're thinking over there. They don't deserve Wemby. Yeah, I mean, with Cade out for the year, they're just screwing off in Detroit. I don't know what the Pistons are going to do with Wiseman. I still don't believe that they're just going to force feed him starters minutes because he hasn't been good enough to deserve them. Are there any ads with Zion out for another month? I don't think anybody that isn't already in a roster. Trey Murphy and Herb continue to play well. So those are the guys, in addition to Ingram. I don't trust Larry Nance to get minutes every game. So, nothing beyond what we've already talked about. Devin Vassell or KJ Martin the rest of the season? This is a super loaded question because Vassell, we still don't have a timeline. But as soon as he comes back, he's way better than KJ. So, it comes down to whether or not you need somebody playing right this second. That's it. That's the whole question. Because if you don't, Vassell is much better. 12-team roto, best to worst. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players. Josh Green, Malachi Branham, Gabe Vincent, Devontae Graham, Larry Nance. Are any of them worth a pickup? I like Gabe Vincent right now with Hero likely out probably to the break. I mean, if he's doubtful today, it seems unlikely he'll play between now and the All-Star break. So, Miami have 2 games this week? If I can get 2 games of Gabe Vincent with only Jimmy Butler and Bam in front of him in the usage pecking order, I like that a lot. Josh Green would be my second favorite ad among them, just to kind of see how long this heater goes. And then the other 3 guys, kind of, 6 of one, half dozen sort of deal. Graham with Trey Jones out would be interesting, more on this injury stream front. And then Branham and Nance, trust him as far as I can throw him. Drop Cam Thomas for Cam Johnson? Yes, I would. What do you believe is Quentin Grimes' situation? I think he's not going to play very much. Grimes is probably a drop. Would you drop Jabari Smith to take a punt on Ben Simmons' upside in a points league? No, I don't think Simmons is going to play that much the rest of the way. THD is also on my wire. Do I like him more than Jabari Smith Jr.? I think I kind of do. It's close. I might stick with Jabari, but man, THT is tight on that one. Input on Thibault, Melton, and THT. Thibault is a speculative ad. Let's see what his role is in Portland. Melton is a hold for 1 more week to see if he gets to do stuff. And then THT is a points league ad. Yes, I am using Basketball Monster. That is correct. Picked up Wiseman when I heard the news about Detroit planning to start him. I also have Jalen Duren. Could they both be held if they split minutes? Any chance they run Wiseman at 4 and Duren at 5? Yeah, there's a chance. Detroit's done some weird stuff. I think Duren still gets 27 or more minutes. I can't imagine they're going to screw this up. But they could. I still don't like Wiseman outside of points formats. I'm going to put that out there one more time. Is Harrison Barnes a drop? Probably. Let's see where the hell he is over the season. Harrison. Spell it right. Yeah, I mean, he was never really an ad. He's super efficient, but his role was so much smaller. JV or Zach Collins, rest of season roto. I think I'm going to go Zach Collins actually here, believe it or not. I just don't see JV. So the thing with JV is if you're holding him on the roto side, you're holding him for like a game that Larry Nance misses effectively. If Nance sits, JV has a bigger ball game. If Ingram sits, JV has a bigger ball game. So roto, you could spot start JV. I think a spot start JV is better than anything you're going to get out of Collins. But if you need someone to play every single day, the better overall numbers here are probably going to be Collins. Should I drop Jay Crowder for Maxi Kleba? I mean, I feel like we're getting into some deeper league stuff here. Probably, but I don't know. I would play whichever one of those guys comes back first, honestly, because I don't think either one's going to do much. Does John Collins or Bogdan Bogdanovic become a drop? I think Bogdan becomes a drop. I think Collins probably feels great that he didn't get traded and plays kind of fast and loose now. Open, free, and easy. I would not drop John Collins. He had a better ball game his last time out, actually. I don't think Sadiq Bey's an ad either. Pick up Jeremy Sohan for Bogdan Bogdanovic. Yes, I think I'd rather have Sohan there. 9-Cat Roto, slow-mo or Eubanks? Slow-mo. Trade Chris Paul for JJJ. Yes. Yes, I would. I like what Chris Paul's done lately. He looks more comfortable now that they're getting options back. But look, they got KD coming in. So as much as I love Chris Paul, that's going to be less for him. KD's going to do more than Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson did. And you've got Booker back too. And look, JJJ's still in the first round, guys. So yes. Not a question, but Onyeka Okongwu hitting value with limited time is amazing. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what we were hoping for because we saw it in his fantasy profile that he could probably get it done with like 22 minutes per ball game. Doing it in 20 is even more impressive. But that to me is why he remains a hold. Oh, an hour and 24 minutes later, I bid you all adieu. Please remember to like and subscribe on your way out. Please, before you click the X button to leave the show, please, I know a handful of you are still listening right now. I haven't lost you yet. Maybe it's possible you haven't heard me starting to do my sign off. On your way out, please remember to hit thumbs up. If you loved the show, if you've enjoyed the questions, if you enjoyed the recap, subscribe. We'll do it again tomorrow. On Twitter again? I don't know. That didn't seem like it went all that great. The hell with you, Twitter. We're a YouTube family. All right, later, everybody.